everybody and welcome to the Flute Practice. Today I want to speak a little bit about something that I think is really kind of one of our biggest weapons in practice, in that practice room, and that is slow practice. I'm hoping today to just kind of like unpack this concept a little bit and to really kind of create a bit of an attitude shift in some of us, maybe for some of us just remind us of the importance of this technique. So let's dive straight into it. I think the problem so often comes that we tend to think of slow practice as this kind of chore. We think, oh, well, I can't play this well enough, or I'm not good enough, or I haven't practiced this enough. And, you know, when your teacher brings out that word, you need to practice this slowly, many of us tend to think like, oh, my word, my teacher thinks I'm bad, or, I haven't worked hard enough, or I'm not doing enough. And we kind of tend to get frustrated and annoyed with ourselves rather than just experiencing the real value and joy that slow practice should be bringing to our practice room. So I want to kind of point out some of the real values or some of the real kind of benefits, I'd say, of slow practice. There are three, for me, really important things that slow practice does. The first thing is it really allows us to have time to think. So this is so important, so that we really have between notes or between phrases or in a piece or study or whatever it might be, we have time to actually think about what we're doing. I always say to my students, practice something as slowly as you need to so that you can really think about what you're doing and play it correctly. We're going to get back to this in a moment about playing things correctly. But the first thing I'd say is it gives you time to think. The second thing, it gives you time to listen. And I know I've spoken quite a lot about the real importance of listening. It allows you to really hear what you are doing, really the little tiny details, rather than just kind of glossing over, a whole bunch of things. We can do this. We can kind of spend our lives just glossing over all of our playing and all of our mistakes and never really take the time to listen properly. But we're not actually going to improve. And those mistakes and so on and so forth, number one, they're going to catch up with you eventually. And number two, they're there and they're there. And many people actually know they're there. So we need time to really be able to listen. The third thing that is really great, it gives us time to look, to see what we're doing. So this is why I love to practice in front of a mirror. I know I've encouraged you guys to do this and I've spoken about this recently in a video, but when we practice slowly, we can really see what our fingers are doing. We can see what our embouchure is doing. We can also feel. So I'd say like the seeing part kind of goes hand in hand with the feeling part. So we got this moment to really feel what our bodies are doing. So we can feel, where is tension? Where is, what is going on actually in my body. When we practice things too fast, it tends to be quite kind of like mindless and we just sort of like in panic mode usually as well, because it's too fast for us and we don't have time to do these things. I cannot kind of explain how important it is for us to really tap into our thinking, into our seeing, into our hearing, and into our feeling while we are playing. So slow practice lets you do all of this awesome stuff, which is so fantastic. I'm going to give you kind of some pointers of what I think good, healthy, slow practice should be. Firstly, and my kind of absolute golden rule in all of this is not to allow yourself to be disengaged. I mean, you should never be disengaged in your practice session. Time is such a valuable commodity resource in our world. We have so little of it. So when you are practicing, you really want to be so absolutely fully and absolutely present. Slow practicing should especially never be disengaged. Remember, the whole reason we are practicing slowly is so that we can engage more, that we have the time and the space to engage more. So when you are practicing slowly and you are switching off here or not focusing on what you're doing or really paying attention to your body and your ears and your eyes and all those things, take a break. Stop. Like huge warning red light. You need to just stop and find a way to reconnect, re-engage. There are a couple of nice little ways that you can do this in slow practice. I think so often the problem is we think of slow practice as this laborious chore, as I said at the beginning of this video. So we need to find ways to keep ourselves excited and engaged in this process. The first thing that I think is really important is, even though you're practicing slowly, don't forget to be musical. Practice the musical phrasing, the expression. And in fact, especially practice it when you're doing it slowly. I love to sometimes kind of set myself this little challenge where I almost try to over exaggerate the character and the musicality and the phrasing and the dynamics and the articulation even when I'm practicing it slowly like that. When you kind of overdo it in the slow practice and then you speed it up, I find a beautiful portion of that kind of over exaggeration stays, and it just comes through so beautifully. So it's a little bit, I think, like when you make like ice cream, you put like a lot of sugar in and then it cools down and it becomes less sweet. So I think it's that way around. Anyway, but it's kind of like that process where you are putting a lot more in it, and then when you speed it up again, a lot of it gets lost, but there's just enough left that, you know, the expression really comes through. So this is once again a lovely kind of spin-off of slow practice. Tied to this, and I think often the mistake we make is we practice something slowly, but we don't actually play it in the way that we're going to play it when it's fast. So we suddenly lengthen the articulation, our fingers become all slow and sluggish. Maybe we even change the articulation sometimes. We change the phrasing. We don't, you know, do any of the musical phrasing we'd normally do. And especially we lose the character. Like we'll be playing an allegro or a happy piece, and suddenly we'll be playing it like all slow and sad because it's slow. So don't do that, guys. I think try and keep that character, try and keep the short articulation. We spoke about moving your fingers and lifting especially your fingers quite quickly and actively, even when you're doing it slowly. So that you're keeping all the same feeling and character and everything, knowing that when you're going to step it up, that's all going to come with it, along with it. It just makes a lot more sense. And you know what? It gives you this feeling of like, I'm actually doing something, like I'm not just wasting my time here, which is so often the problem with slow practice. All right, one of the really important concepts, and I, touched on this in the beginning of the video, is practicing things correctly. Practicing it first time correctly. You know how many times I have learned a piece or started practicing a piece and I have not insisted upon playing things enough times absolutely correctly. And this is not to be like, you must be perfect, and if you play it wrong, you don't judge yourself or come down on yourself, but rather you're allowing yourself to play it so slowly that you can play it correctly from the very beginning, from the get-go. So when you're learning a new piece especially, do it really calmly and slowly, knowing that the more times you play it correctly now, the better it's going to be later. So really, this concept really changed the game for me, of learning things first time correctly and not getting into the cycle of like, oh, that bit's difficult, so it's okay if I make a whole bunch of mistakes and play it too fast. It doesn't have to be that way, guys. You are putting obstacles in your way that don't need to be there. The last thing that I think we need to find ways of doing is practicing with joy, practice with patience, practicing in a way that we trust the process, that we are not getting frustrated and angry and annoyed with ourselves in the slow practice, but rather that we know it's going to get better in time, that this is part of the process, that what we're doing is helping and it's beneficial and it's incredibly powerful. I think when we start to bring this kind of sense, I've spoken a lot about this curiosity and this experimental kind of feeling, and I want to kind of take that a step further and bring a sense of joy and a sense of trusting in the process and a sense of, you know what, this is growing and changing and expanding and developing, and it's going to be better tomorrow than it was today. Guys, there is so much to talk about in slow practice, and I hope to bring more of my own insights and others' insights into this very, very awesome, powerful tool that we have. Give yourself just a moment and some time to find this lovely, slow, calm, and ultimately very productive practice. It's wonderful, it's exciting, it's one of the reasons I love doing what I do, because we just really get to kind of like get stuck into these amazing processes that I think often carry over into our real lives as well. It's so, so, so wonderful. So maybe, you know what, maybe slow practice or the concept of slow practice is not so much for your flute playing this weekend or this week or this month, but rather maybe for something else in your life too. Guys, I am such a strong believer in the two crossover between making music and our own personal growth and development. So have fun, happy practicing, and see you next time.